Ding. Okay, hi, I'm Tina Brown, and we're here with the great and wonderful Michael Lewis, who is famous perhaps in a way that no American writer has been since Tom Wolfe, for landing with each new book on whatever it is that people are talking about just at that moment when they're thirsting to know more. Michael was a bond salesman at Salomon Brothers when his book Liar's Poker cracked open the chest-beating culture of late 80s Wall Street as only an observer in the thick of it could do. Billy Beane of Moneyball once said, "Michael's got a horseshoe in his underwear." I think it's actually really true, because he's shown himself to be brilliant at picking unknown people who turn out to be at the heart of action yet to unfold. Michael Burry in The Big Short, Michael O'Hare in The Blind Side, and Billy Beane himself. And so it was no surprise when other writers indeed heaved a sigh of what else. It turned out that he had special access to the mysterious cryptocurrency wunderkind Sam Bankman-Fried, who amassed $22.5 billion before the age of 30 with FTX, the cryptocurrency exchange that he co-founded, becoming a darling of celebrities. A darling of celebrities. He paid for endorsements and Democratic fundraisers to whom he donated fortunes. And then, dramatically, it was revealed that Sam was defrauding FTX investors by moving billions of their capital into his hedge fund Alameda. The whole circus blew up right in front of Michael Lewis's eyes. And the book ends with the author, it's my favorite element of this book, literally wandering the vacated Bahamas campus of FTX, where the half-eaten meals and tossed bedding of the fleeing staff remained in place like a ghost ship, as its wild-haired, oddball CEO, Bankman-Fried, was carted off to jail. Once again, in Going Infinite, Michael saw what was next, gave it human form, and reported his own views of Sam Bankman-Fried without fear or favor. So we have so much to ask him, and I'm delighted to see you, Michael.
So I was just reminded of how wonderful your editor's letters were.
Oh, God.
They were always so good. And the other thing is, it's not a horseshoe in my underwear.
Okay. Well, okay. Well, let's get going. So this tale that you wrote about Sam, it was certainly not the tale that we expected, and certainly not what the judge saw when he sent him down for 25 years. I mean, the trial, saw him as a reckless, evil fraudster. And in your book, really, we get a fragile, confused, spectrum-y kid who sort of was allowed to go crazily over his head. So were you surprised by the verdict? And do you think that you got him wrong?
No, and no.
Yeah.
So can I go into both of them?
Yeah, sure.
Something like 99% of the people who were charged with federal crimes either plead guilty or are convicted. So just for starters, the odds of him coming out of there innocent were very low. I can remember having a conversation with him. I asked him to put, that's what he does, he handicaps everything.
Right.
Handicap the likelihood you're going to walk. And he said he thought he had a 1 in 10 chance. Mm-hmm. And I remember saying to him, and this was when he was under house arrest in Stanford, I said I'd put it more like 1 in 30. And I think most people would put it more like 1 in 100. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so, no, I was assuming he would be sent to jail. The great suspense was for how long.
Right.
I mean, it wasn't so much the verdict. There wasn't a whole lot of suspense in the trial. And there wasn't a whole lot that was surprising to me in the trial. Little bits and pieces. But what I couldn't, the judge was a cipher. I mean, it was a little hard. You could tell he didn't like Sam Bankman-Fried, but it was a little hard to know how he was reading the whole thing. Mm. And so it was the sentence that I was close in my guess of what it was going to be, but it could have been anything. He could have sent him away for life, or he could have just said, 3 years. And I just didn't know what he was going to do.
Remind us what he got.
He got 25 years. And it's a real 25 years, right? There's no parole in the federal system. So he'll get, I think if you behave really, really well, you can get 15% off your sentence. Mm-hmm. So he's in for 20 years, and the likelihood of an appeal working is very, very, very low.
Which is what he's working on at the moment.
Right, and so, but I thought, it was so clear that something wrong had happened, but once you got, the story itself was quite nuanced, I thought. Mm-hmm. I don't think, for example, he set out to commit fraud. I think, in fact, that's crazy. Mm-hmm. He didn't even set out to create a crypto exchange. Mm-hmm. And he kind of stumbled in it by accident. And you can see the breadcrumbs on the trail that lead him to where he gets. But there's so much that's interesting.
Well,
about this case.
and then we have a lot to go into.
But should we just start maybe back up and I can maybe explain how this story?
Well, yes, I would like to do that. And we're going to do that. Because when you first met Sam, it was through an investor, right, who was about to bind his fate to Sam's, and he wanted an opinion from you, who he thought he could, really judge what you thought of Sam. And you spent time with him, and you met this guy with his exploding hair and his T-shirts and cargo shorts. And why did you, who is such a deeply skeptical judge of character, you gave him you said, yes, this guy is credible. What did you find about Sam that was compelling? Because many people did and have, and obviously placed a great deal of money with him.
Yeah, 140 venture capitalists and 2 million crypto investors and all the media, and everybody loved him.
Everybody.
And there was an artlessness about him when you first met him. And a kind of just, it was all out there in a way you did not expect of someone who Forbes said was worth $24 billion. And a lot of what came out of his mouth was interesting. So when I first meet him, I'm tasked with saying, should I make this investment in Sam Bankman-Fried? And I kind of said, what could go wrong? But I think if you go back to Liar's Poker, you'll find that my investment advice has often been poor. But I was already entranced with him as a character. It was like, and the aspects of it were, he had such a spectrum. I didn't know I still don't know. He was diagnosed for autism for the first time in his life while he was on trial. So nobody had ever tested him as a kid. I really do think one day someone's going to come back and say we didn't understand the human brain well enough to understand what he had.
I completely agree with that.
It's different. I don't even know. But it comes across quite powerfully in person. And it's turning the world into a math problem because he has absolutely no interest in most of the things most people are interested in: emotion, beauty, art. I took him on this gorgeous hike and he didn't even look up. Almost killed him the hike, but it didn't. But it didn't. He just is like insensitive to everything, except what's in his mind. This kind of So that was one thing that interested me. But the thing I was more interested, so it was curious character. I didn't have a beat on the character right away. It took me a long time to feel like I had a beat on the character. But the situation was so wild. And it wasn't just, he's gone from having no dollars to having $24 billion in 18 months. It was, he would clearly allow me access to places that would be very hard for me otherwise to get access to that I've always wanted access to. So, for example, 2 chapters of the book are about Jane Street Capital, about this thing that's happened on Wall Street that no one has described. That the Sam Bankman-Fried is now the face of Wall Street trading. They wouldn't have, the Solomon brothers I worked for was famous for taking intellectuals and turning them into traders, but they wouldn't have touched him with a 10-foot pole. There were social filters in place that had vanished and had been replaced with these intellectual filters that he passed through beautifully.
Yeah, and his amazing skill with games.
The puzzle solving, and that had become what a trader was. That was like I always thought. After an hour with him, I thought, if I can work my way into his life and I can figure out what this book is, there are going to be 2 chapters about Jane Street. There's going to be stuff on our political process. He's throwing money around in ways that, just nobody. It was so on both parties.
But also the crypto world, which is so fascinating. To me, that, and I think to a lot of people, it seems so opaque and confusing. What was the secret sauce or loophole in the crypto markets that Sam saw?
2 things.
And exploited. He exploited it with such success. And why had nobody else seen that?
So 2 things. So if you think about what Jane Street does for a living, and the sums of money these high-frequency trading firms make dwarf what used to be made on Wall Street trading desks. It's not your bonus is $2 million. Your bonus is $25 million. And what they're doing is they're looking for small, riskless or close to riskless trades to make, price discrepancies that shouldn't exist, and arbitrage opportunities. And Sam is sitting on that desk, and he's saying, this is a crude example, but IBM shares are trading at 5 cents higher in India than they are in New York, and so you can sell it in India and buy it in New York and make a nickel. That kind of thing. Now, he's looking at really small opportunities in normal financial markets. When he turns and sees crypto in 2017, and Bitcoin is trading at, these are made up numbers, but the orders of the magnitude are about right. You can buy one in New York for $600 and sell it in Japan for $900. I mean, these institutions that make our financial markets efficient, that are now called Jane Street and Citadel and so on and so forth, they had not found their way into crypto to make crypto efficient. So he said, if I could just get some capital, I can do what I do for Jane Street in the crypto markets. I'll create a Jane Street for crypto, and it will be a money machine. So that was his first insight, and he was right. He was right. He was in a rush because he knew that Jane Street would eventually get there. It's like we're going to professionalize this. So flash forward, and it's messy. The whole story of how he creates a hedge fund is an amazing story and a premonition, and it foreshadows what's going to happen later, because half his firm quits because they think he's a crook. But he gets to a point where he realizes that there's something in this market, the crypto markets, that he needs and that no one's creating, and it's sort of a professional grade crypto exchange that can handle a high-frequency trader without losing track of the trades, without losing track of the money. That a lot of the crypto exchanges were bulky enterprises. They weren't designed like the New York Stock Exchange. And he and his colleagues write the software for a professional-grade crypto exchange and don't think that they are going to open one, because they think of this as a retail business, that you're going to have customers. You have to relate to ordinary people. And he has no ability to relate to ordinary people. So he goes around, he takes his software around to other Asian crypto exchanges and says, here, do this for us so we can trade on it, and maybe we'll own a piece of it. And nobody wants to do it. So it forces him into this position of, oh, well, nobody's going to do it, we ought to do it.
And why didn't they want to do it?
They didn't. They're all making so much money, and it looked like, I think, trouble and complicated. And he's American, they're Chinese. Nobody was just that enthusiastic. No one saw it as a big business opportunity. And it was to trade futures as opposed to cash, Bitcoin, or other things. So Sam was right about this. He was right, if you built a professional grade exchange, that Jane Street would show up and trade on it. And that's why he's building it for the place he worked for, basically. And that's his first customers are these high-frequency trading firms. And it takes a couple of months, but it goes boom. And it is a successful, flourishing exchange, but it's got some problems.
Right. Now, when did you first think that something fishy might be going on?
I didn't. I thought it was such a lucrative natural business. I thought it'd be insane to do what they were insane to do what they did. So one of the things about this that is so interesting. I mean, people throw around like, oh, it's just like Bernie Madoff. It's not all like Bernie Madoff. That Bernie Madoff's business wasn't a real business in the end. It was a Ponzi scheme. Yeah. He was attracting investment from new people to give false returns to old people. That's not, and as a result, when you looked at Bernie Madoff's business, if you really analyzed it from the outside and you were really smart, you were able to see that something was wrong. There was a guy named Harry Markopolos who did this. Yeah. He actually said, look, I can show you why that he went to the FBI or wherever he went to say, look, you got to shut this down. Nobody. People said, there's something shady going on in FTX because they said there's something shady going on in every crypto exchange. It was like a good rule of thumb that if it's crypto, there's something squirrely going on. But they were just throwing mud at a wall. They were not making a specific charge. No one said he's got the customers' deposits that are supposed to be on the exchange in cold storage in his private hedge fund. No one said it because he shouldn't have, and it made no sense for him. It was really silly. But there's a backstory to this, and the backstory is when they open FTX, people want to put their dollars, wire dollars to them, so that they can then turn the dollars into bets on crypto, buying crypto futures. So they have to, in order to accept the deposits. So the exchange is different from the New York Stock Exchange. They are serving as a kind of bank for the people who are trading on the exchange. They have to have a bank that will receive U.S. dollars. And there wasn't, when they opened their exchange, a bank in the world that was willing to bank a crypto exchange. There were a couple of banks in the United States, Silvergate and Signature, that were willing to bank Alameda Research, the crypto trading firm. And one of those banks actually says to them, we can't bank you as a crypto exchange. We can't take the social risk, the regulatory risk of whoever your customers are going to be on that exchange, but we're willing to take Alameda risk. So why don't you just have them wire the money to Alameda, and you'll hold the FTX money in Alameda. So if you go back to the beginning, one of the many hundreds of curious things about this story is that the people who are wiring money to FTX in the beginning, these are not little people. These are not dummies. This is jump trading in Jane Street and these kind of places. They know when they fill out the form, when they're wiring it to something called Alameda or North Dimension. It's not saying FTX on the thing. And nobody said anything. Like, I've seen these, like, people knew that they were sending it to the wrong place in the beginning. They were just trusting that Alameda would warehouse it as if it were just normal FTX deposits. So that's how this is the first red line they cross.
Yeah, they crossed it, but it was a complicit red line, as you say. I mean, let's just go back to Sam and this whole kind of autistic question, because it does really fascinate me as the mother of an on the spectrum child. I mean, when I read the book, to me, it's just so obvious to me.
Is it?
Yes, completely. That he has all of the symptoms of, he had no friends, he struggled with empathy and social skills. I mean, he had this sort of unrelenting sense of alienation, except when he plays video games. And yet, he also, was able to communicate in ways that made people give him the money. So that itself is an interesting thing, that, as you say, these two things don't usually go together.
They don't go together.
And I was actually pretty fascinated by his childhood and baffled really about his parents, who I find deeply interesting characters. These two well-known Stanford professors. I mean, they didn't have him in any kind of special schools or therapy or anything. I mean, to me, there was that very brilliantly poignant scene in the book at a fun fair when he's small and his mother asks him if he's having fun, and he has to sort of look at her face to figure out whether he should be having fun or what fun looks like.
No, she says when she got busted that she was pretending that she had a normal child in her hands. She takes him to do this normal child thing, and they're moving around. He's not exhibiting any feeling about what they're doing. And he looks up and he says, "Mom, are you having fun?"
Right.
And he was just humoring her, she realized.
That's right. And he didn't really understand or know or feel what fun could look like as a child.
So as I got to know him, one of the things you do the 360, right? You want to interview everybody around him, including all the people, not just in FTX, but people from his childhood. So I said, give me a list of just the people I should talk to who knew you before the age of 21 or 18. And he said, before the 18, he said, Slim Pickens. And I said, what do you mean, Slim Pickens? He goes, there's maybe one person. And I said, well, like, what about your brother? He says, well, you can call him. And I called the brother. He says he was a stranger in the house, that he sat in his room. Right. That it was that and I found people who went to his high school with him, and interviewed them. With no help from him, but it's like he was the degree of isolation. It's hard to imagine it. He's living on the Stanford campus,
right.
And he's all by himself looking at the world.
Right, and that must have been a lot of pain in that, surely.
She doesn't talk about that, right? I would think so.
Yeah.
He becomes aware at a pretty early age that he's different, and he doesn't feel the things that other people feel. That he doesn't feel love. That he doesn't feel risk in the same the way other people feel it. So
I was surprised that it didn't form any kind of thread in his defense. I mean, why didn't the defense lawyer use that as a way to sort of humanize him and his issues and also his behavior, essentially? Because if you don't feel risk, if you have got these, spectrum, qualities where you sort of don't read things like anyone else, don't see them as anyone else, it is a factor, presumably, in not being a intending criminal.
He's so hard to humanize. It takes work. And the environment in which that trial took place, nobody wanted to hear anything like that.
Right.
I think that he was so far gone and so easily dehumanized, and he was treated as this kind of monster. But from the moment it all blew up, all these people who worshipped him before turned.
Yeah.
And it got so vicious so quickly. I don't know. I think I don't know the answer to why the lawyers did not try to explain who he was. They did a bit.
Well, why did his lawyer put him on the stand? I mean, he must have known, because he was a disaster on the stand.
Oh my God. No, so that wasn't, the lawyers knew not to put him on the stand.
Yeah.
And I was terrified that was my phone that was the alarm. No, thank God. Sam, his first step when a grown-up tells him to do something is to assume the grown-up doesn't know what they're talking about, even when the grown-up is a famous expert, and to think about it for himself. And he decided very quickly his lawyers didn't know what they were doing, and he was the world's worst client. And he insisted on going on the stand. And when he insisted, when he would tell me, I spent a lot of time with him because he was under house arrest right near my house. And when he was explaining to me his thinking, it sounded kind of reasonable because what I thought he was going to do when he got on the stand, I mean, the last thing he should have done is seem guarded, furtive, untrustworthy. I thought he was going to kind of lay it all out there. And instead he got on the stand and he was sneakier on the stand than I've ever seen him in life ever. and he was doing things. I was in the courtroom. And he'd do things like they ask him a question. They'd ask him, did you have dinner with Bill Clinton and the Prime Minister of the Bahamas? And he'd go, let me think about that. No, I don't really remember. And I was there. I remember. And I was like, I'll tell you. I almost want to raise my hand in the courtroom. He says, did you fly on a private jet to the Super Bowl? I don't remember that. It was things you just don't forget. And he hung himself. I mean, and it was, so what he thought was going to happen, he makes these sort of, obviously, these kind of misjudgments. It's a colossal misjudgment. Mm-hmm. So the lawyers tried to tell him not to do it, and he insisted on doing it, and it was a catastrophe. Yeah, yeah. So that's what happened.
The other fascinating thing, though, is that, what is interesting about him, and again, I guess could have been used in his defense, was that unlike some of your characters, I mean, he wasn't motivated by greed, actually.
It's different. The judge tried to get his mind around this, right?
Yeah, it's very different. I mean, he subscribed to this philosophy of effective altruism.
And really believed it.
And he really believed it. So why and how did Sam essentially get caught up in this idea of effective altruism, the idea of amassing vast wealth just to give it away, when he doesn't really care about anybody anyway? This is a man with no empathy to anything.
He doesn't care about people.
He doesn't care about people. So
except to save them.
So why does he want to get into this effective altruism? It just did not add up to me.
Well, so you start with this child who's completely isolated. Later years in high school, in the summer, he goes to math camp, and he finds not exactly a tribe, some people who we can kind of relate to. Mm-hmm. Several of whom end up working for him at FTX. He gets to MIT, and he's with the math crowd. And his way of thinking about the world is it's stripping of emotion and mathematical-like reasoning. And effective altruism was catnip to such a person. But it was handing you a rational morality. It's like what you start with the premise what you should do with your life is maximize the number of lives you save. Mm-hmm. Then it becomes a math problem. It's kind of a jump. That's what you're going to do with your life, but that's the jump they all make. They start in a kind of grounded place. Like if I make $1 or I make $100 and I only need to live on 50 to live on it, I can give the other 50 away. How do I maximize the number of lives I save with that $50? And then they start doing more math about like the effectiveness of malaria, of bed nets in saving children's lives in Africa. It's all very here and now. And about the time Sam collides with this movement, and he collides with one of the gurus of the movement. His name's William McGaskill, who gave a talk in Cambridge, and Sam went to the talk. And afterwards, he had Sam at hello. But at that moment, the movement had jumped to, well, if this is the math problem, and you are able to even slightly shift the odds of an existential risk, a meteor hitting the Earth, or a pandemic that wipes out humanity, or AI slipping the leash and eating us all. That is obviously the greatest number of lives you could save, even if you only shift the odds slightly against that. So that becomes the obsession in the game, and it solves the problem of what you're supposed to do with your life.
Well, how effective was Sam's altruism?
It wasn't.
I mean, he did make an absolute fortune, but what did he give it to?
No, well, so they were just getting going. He'd given away a couple $100 million. He gave away more than half of his Jane Street salary. He gave it to effective altruist organizations that then gave it on. This is an interesting question. One day, this is too early to say. He was giving money away in a really interesting way. I don't go into it much but there's a scene right before the whole thing collapses where I'm in the room with them and they're talking about the grants they're making. And what they decided is they looked at philanthropic institutions. They saw how much the institution itself actually ate up money, just for the institution. And you set yourself up to, if your goal is to minimize AI risk or improve pandemic prevention or whatever these categories were that they were interested in, it's expensive for you to evaluate every proposal. So what they did instead was they found people they admired, smart people, subject matter experts, and they just wired them $1 million and said, give it away. Give it away in the smart way. And so there are a zillion of these little grants that went out there, and one day someone could come back and evaluate whether they were smart grants. But there were things he did that at the time, people said, oh, that's preposterous, that's idiotic. I'll give you one example. When it all fell apart, I was sitting with John Ray, who was who took over the bankruptcy and was the new person running FTX and was very invested in telling everybody how awful Sam Bankman-Fried was, and he was telling me that. He was saying not only was he awful, he was stupid. He gave $500 million to this AI company called Anthropic. No one's ever heard of it. It's just an idea. We think it's worth zero.
I know.
Now that's I don't know, the investment's worth $5 billion. I don't know what it's worth. So he
had a kind of
he wasn't they weren't stupid.
Right. No.
They were just weird. And so there are a number of in the portfolio that John Ray was handed by Sam Bankman-Fried when Sam Bankman-Fried signed the bankruptcy papers, it's not just Anthropic. He's got a piece of SpaceX. He's got a piece of Elon Musk's SpaceX. He's got, well, this is not earth-shattering, but a piece of the Kardashians' liquor company. Right. It's worth 4 or 5 times what he paid for it. It's not a bad portfolio. Right. It's just a weird portfolio. And their evaluation of what to do with the money, it was a work in progress. And there was a friction there because they were making money so fast, it looked like this $40 billion company might soon be a $200 billion company. And I talked to the world's most famous venture capitalists who put money into it, who said this could be a $1 trillion company, that they were thinking, well, let's keep making it because it'll give us even more to give away.
Yeah.
But there was an argument among the inner circle, like we're still spending all this time making money. Let's start giving it all away. Yeah. And there was a question was when you do that.
Yeah. Well, then a kind of velocity had taken over, and so here's the question. I mean, did that velocity take over, and he just went nuts with it?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's what happened. I think that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
It was intoxicating.
Yeah.
The judge was an interesting man. The judge was working with less material than I had. I pitied him. Because all you had when you're the judge is basically what's in the courtroom. Yeah. And a lot of stuff just doesn't get into the courtroom. It's not, the stories lawyers tell are not good stories. They leave out lots of stuff, right. Both sides. And a lot of stuff the judge won't let in the courtroom at all. So he's working with, and people get on the witness stand and they say things that aren't completely true too. And they don't say everything that's true. So he was doing his best. But his conclusion, he looked at Sam and he said, I don't actually think you were in this for the money. He said, it's worse almost. He said, you were in it for the power. Mm-hmm. You wanted power. And you wanted power in the most spectacular way. And you had an ability to get power that he basically says frightens me. And the justification he gave for sentencing Sam to 25 years in jail was, you're too dangerous to let out.
Maybe there is some truth though in that.
It's kind of hard to believe Sam Bankman-Fried could go do it all again right now. But it's, I mean, I just think the world would be as accommodating. But it's that was what the judge had those feelings.
He had those feelings,
Yeah.
right. So let's just talk a bit about your fascinating to me anyway reporting process. Do you sort of follow the Janet Malcolm path of mostly listening and then hanging out with the subject, or do you prepare intensely in advance, like David Halberstam? I mean, and how do you know when you found gold? You know, is it just a spidey sense that this character is somebody that you want to live with for a long time and get into? I mean, how do you detect all those things?
I don't do that.
You don't do that?
No, you're a preparer.
Yes.
You're a real preparer. I can't believe you've got note cards. Yeah. But we could have done this just shooting the shit.
I know, but
and you didn't have to do this.
But I'm a preparer.
And you're a preparer, so I am not.
Right.
Because I want them to get, I don't feel I trust what I see until I've got them so comfortable that they forgot I'm there. It's total immersion. So and also, I have to be able to walk away. It have to always be, maybe I'm writing a book, maybe I'm not. So I meet Sam Bankman-Fried in September of 2021. It all falls apart in November of 2022. I didn't really move into his life until December of 21, January 22. But so call it 11 months. I lived in the Bahamas. I commuted to the Bahamas. I was with him thousands of hours. I interviewed everybody around him, a lot of the investors, people who hated him, whatever. And I was still at the point in November that I didn't think I wasn't sure I had a book. I was at an event like this, a retreat that Jeff Bezos has every year, the Friday before FTX collapsed. And I pulled aside a director who's a friend of mine because I just wanted to see, the question I was asking him is, here's what I've been doing for the last year. Here's this character. Let me explain it to you. Here are the situations I've observed, but I don't know if I have a book. And he said, you don't have a movie. He says, you don't have a movie because you don't have a third act. You have no ending. And I said, that's true. I have no idea where it's going. And he said, but you could, this material's so good. You could make this swing on the page. It's funny, it's interesting, takes you all kinds of places like Jane Street. I want to read about that. He said, you could trick the reader into thinking you have an ending. You're a good enough writer, you can fake it.
Yeah.
Right? And I said, I felt I had this uncomfortable feeling like, I don't know if I'm ready to do that. Yeah. A week later, I get an email from him, and he says, can I direct the movie? Because it had all fallen apart. I mean, it just like, I had moments like I felt Sam Bankman-Fried was orchestrating a nonfiction narrative masterpiece for me. Yeah. He was like doing his best to make this the best book possible. Yeah. And it was, so my reporting, what I do is I hang. Yeah. And I don't do a lot of, in the beginning, because the best way to get to know people is do things with them. Sure. So you go and find out what they want to do. Play pickleball, whatever it is. Move the furniture from one side of the room to the other. It almost doesn't matter what it is to get to know them. And then they get comfortable with you. I let them get to know me. And then they just start letting you be in every room. And then you start to really figure it out. And then what happens, especially when you're starting at the top like that with the person who runs the company, everybody else in the company says, well, it's okay to talk to him. And I had people come to interviews back in good times. They'd say, we weren't supposed to talk to anybody, but Sam says we can tell you anything. And I thought that was interesting. So I have to get that feeling. About the character, it is just, am I interested? If I trust.
If you want to keep going back.
If I want to keep going. So you were a magazine editor. You're a wonderful magazine editor. You must have noticed that's what some writers are interested in wasn't that interesting to you.
Many times.
Right?
They had to be redirected.
It had to be redirected.
And they often didn't know that what they were saying about something else was much more interesting than what they wanted to do.
That's right. Yeah. So, and some people, some of the writers, it just so happens that what they're interested in, other people are interested in. Yeah. And I'm one of those.
Yeah.
I've always been one of those. Yeah. And maybe it's just that I'm more average. No, seriously, that I don't go into that I have ordinary tastes, but whatever it is, I trust that if I'm interested, and I also trust if I'm not. And I've walked away from a lot of characters because I've lost interest in them.
There's just the most amazing scene in the book, and I just sort of want to know how you got it.
I know what you're going to say.
Anna Wintour.
I knew you were going to come to this.
It's just so amazing. And this is the scene in which Anna Wintour, on a Zoom, is pitching Sam Bankman-Fried to underwrite the Met Ball. And Sam is sitting there. Anna Wintour doesn't know that actually what he's doing is he's not listening to her at all. He's just playing a video game.
Yeah, it's on a Zoom.
Storybook brawl.
Yep.
Through her entire pitch, right? Mortifying for Anna Wintour had she known. So how did you get that? I mean, because if he's sitting there talking to Anna Wintour, playing Storybook Brawl, where are you in that scene? Are you behind the video screen?
So just far enough away that she can't see me.
I see.
I was in the room. It was just me and him in the hotel room.
Right.
And what happened was he had the hotel room next to me because I was just going where he went. And he said, before we go to the next thing, I have this stupid thing I need to do. I said, what's the stupid thing? There's this person named Anna Wintour I got to talk to. And she wants me to do something. I said, do you know who she is? He goes, no. He says, I don't know. I'm going to get a little memo when I log on. It'll tell me who she is. And I said, I got to watch this. Can I watch this? He goes, sure, come watch this. And the hard part was that first, I never really quoted her. I felt badly. I really felt a little badly. But I just was watching him. There was so much going on off Zoom. He had his storybook brawl, and that it was just chaos. Heads flying, blood splattering, hatchets going, dwarves and witches and trees, and I couldn't follow the. I had already started to learn to play the game so I could understand what he was so interested in. So I could follow it a bit. But I was, scribbling down what the dwarf is doing to the tree.
Yeah, because, you actually got everything.
I got all the details. And the slow part was this Zoom conversation to which he was devoting about 1/10 of his brain space. and saying, and he'd just say, oh, that's interesting. Oh, yes, that's interesting. And he left her with the impression he was going to pay for the whole Met Ball. She thought she had him. And he was not, but he was then going to his Twitter feed. I was watching his mind at work. And
he had no intention of going to the Met Ball.
Oh, no.
Not at all.
No, he wasn't going to go there. He goes, what is this thing? Afterwards he was done, I said, you're going to pay for the Met Ball? He goes, no. I said, well, do you even know what it is? He goes, not really, not entirely. I said, well, you got to dress up. He goes, oh, I don't want to do that. He says, the whole thing was preposterous. But that was Sam Bankman-Fried in the world. Everybody wanted him. Yeah, Everybody wanted him.
It was an absolutely magical scene. There's another character that does just fascinate me before we can turn to questions, and that is, of course, Caroline Ellison, right? So he made her the chief executive of his hedge fund, Alameda Research, even though she was 27 years old and had only had 18 months of trading experience. And they were also, romantically involved. And he once told her, which really I found just sort of painful, that he didn't really have a soul.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is like so agonizingly sort of self-aware. So what is your take on Caroline? Because, of course, she flipped in the end, right? And she became the big witness against him.
She did. And if the only narrative that might have saved Sam in the courtroom, if the jury could have been persuaded of it and they tried, was that it was all Caroline's fault. Right. She was running Alameda Research.
And what is your view?
She didn't help.
Do you really think that?
So I don't think what I don't buy. So the only part of the part of the testimony that bothered me the most was I was around these people constantly. They are not good actors. They were not thinking they had a big problem. They didn't have a big problem until June of 2022. That before that, they had enough money in there they could repay everybody. But then the crypto market collapses. They have to repay $8 to $10 billion of loans to crypto banks. If they just stiffed the banks, they could have made their customers whole. They didn't stiff the banks. That decision is the big moment. Caroline, even after that decision, is obsessing about how Sam feels about her. She's not living like she has any kind of anxiety about anything. I mean, I think there was a degree of like, this isn't as big a problem as all that. And I think she was over her head really good at managing the people. She had never been supposed to manage the financial risk, that she was supposed to be the head with someone else, and that other person had left earlier that year. So she was I think she was just like a little over her head. Now the thing is, I thought this story had Shakespearean dimensions to it. These people not knowing themselves, and moving through the world and creating these. But she was completely in love with Sam. Sam tells her, "You shouldn't be in love with me because I don't have a soul." Sam likes sex a lot. So they're having sex all the time.
I can't imagine what sex
Yeah,
would sound like.
So.
I mean, talk about effective altruism. I mean,
No. But this is Sam was highly sexed, but it was true. The effective altruists also had this free love thing going. Like it was utilitarian. They didn't believe in monogamy. They had a principled not belief in monogamy, and so when all blew up. This gets out, and it gets out that these couples living together in this penthouse, all 10 of them, and it starts getting referred to as the polycule. And people had these vivid imaginations of them having orgies all the time. Except for Sam, I don't think, and Caroline, I'm not sure anybody was having sex. They were so funny. They so believed in having sex, but they didn't really have much of it. It was like someone who granted themselves a hunting license but didn't own a gun. They just weren't that way. They were like, I had a pass to go in and out of that place all hours of the night. And if you go in all hours of the night, you'd found them playing board games. That's what they did. They play board games. But Caroline and Sam, but the thing where it gets really curious with Caroline is even after she is made to understand that Sam is never going to be her boyfriend. He's never going to want to be seen in public with her. He's never going to acknowledge the relationship. Even then, and so we're now in problem time, May, June of 22, she is telling people that she'll continue to sleep with Sam because that's the highest expected value move, that Sam is the most important person for the future of the world, and just keeping him satisfied was a good use of her time.
Wow. So she is a piece of work, essentially.
It's amazing, right?
I mean, I could
amazing story.
I could read a whole novel
So
about
just
Caroline.
so
I have to go to the audience because
before you do that, let me ask you one question. I want to ask you a question.
Right.
Did you see the value of the material just as a magazine editor? Isn't that
Oh my God, it's so rich. I mean, it's a six-parter. It's a
yes. I mean, I've just written a whole other thing to stick on the back of the paperback.
I hope you do the follow-up now. I actually do hope you do part 2 because I want to now.
What would that be?
Well, I think it would be about now re-examining everything you saw through the prism of this verdict and what happened, and through the prism of what Caroline said on the stand.
Yeah.
There is now a really great part 2 to be done, in my view. So I don't have a magazine right now to assign it.
It's a pity.
However, should I have one, that's what I would assign. And I would love now to go to the audience because I know we have lots of questions.
You're in charge.
Start with, this gentleman did put his hand up first with the black T-shirt. Yes.
Is this better? Michael, you wrote Liar's Poker not to be a guide for young people to go into the investment banking space because you're a little critical about the lack of value creation in investment banking. But then you write about Sam Bankman-Fried and cryptocurrency. I'm curious, one, if you see value creation or some kind of tangible societal gain from crypto. And then second, was the oddity of Sam so extreme that maybe it concealed the house of cards that FTX eventually was built on?
So there's a line in the end of the book where if there's a moral center of the story, it's a guy named Zane Tackett, who is like original crypto guy, who is believes in honesty amongst his crypto people. He drives him crazy that Sam put him in a position of lying to his crypto mates that their money was safe. And he said his explanation was, my only explanation of how this happened is he's so odd that nobody could see past the oddity. So I think those were very true words. But back to the original premise, I don't write how-to books, and I don't write books that are trying to drive people in some direction. I just find great stories. And even Liar's Poker, where I was in the middle of the story, I got pushed like, what's the point of the book, or what do you hope to achieve? And I did not. It wasn't like I'm against investment banking. I had one beef, and I didn't really satisfy the beef with the book. My beef was when I was coming out of college was the moment that the moment after Wall Street had exploded, and it hasn't changed. It's like if you're going to Harvard, Princeton, or Yale, you're almost not allowed not to think about Goldman Sachs or Jane Street or some VC firm now. That it's what you do, because it's the next step in the meritocratic race. And I had a roommate who he would have been God's gift to oceanographers. He loved the ocean. He spent his summers at Woods Hole. It was like he was made to go do this thing. And he got persuaded that no, you can't. Finance is the responsible thing to do. And I watched that happen. Things get snuffed out in the name of like I'm going to go get rich, and that bothered the hell out of me because I knew that the value I created no value for the world when I was at Salomon Brothers, and they paid me a lot of money. I'm sure there are people out there in finance who do create value, but I wasn't one of them. So I proved the point that you get paid a lot of money and create no value. And I thought by demystifying Wall Street, that the next kid who was an oceanographer would just go become an oceanographer. Nope, that's not what happened. What happened was I got 1,000 letters from people saying, "Dear Mr. Lewis, I'm a junior at Ohio State, and I was kind of thinking about going to Wall Street. Now I really want to go to Wall Street." and this comes to where this comes full circle. Big Short. The reason I'm able to write The Big Short is all those people who blew up those Wall Street firms, they went to Wall Street because they read Liar's Poker. And they would tell me their story. They told me that. They'd tell me the stories about what happened. But they'd say, I'm sitting down with you only because you're the reason I'm here. And I heard this like the 5th time. I thought, Jesus Christ, I created this crisis. All these people who shouldn't have come to Wall Street read my book and came to Wall Street. I was never like thinking like, oh, why write this book about Sam Bankman-Fried? It isn't because I want everybody to be like Sam Bankman-Fried or to hate Sam Bankman-Fried. It's just an amazing story and an amazing reflection of the world we live in. Like you can read it and learn. I hope when I write a book, I hope that when the book club gets together and they have 10 members of the book club, they come with 10 different things they think this book is about. And they've gotten completely different stories out of it. They've seen it, they've read some different book. So it's alive. That's when a book works with a reader, it's because there's some organic thing happening. It's not you're preaching to them. It's like you're having a different kind of relationship. And this material, I thought, really afforded that.
Absolutely did that. Is there value in well, hang on. You've had your question.
All right.
Next question, and then you. Yeah.
Thank you. So my question is about Sam Bankman-Fried's parents, because to me, I find them the most fascinating and actually find it really quite tragic and in a way sympathetic. I don't think that this is what they expected would obviously happen. They've definitely had this fall from grace and a fall from this academic pedestal. But I'm wondering, is it right to feel as sympathetic for them as I do? Because I know that they also played a role within FTX, and I'm wondering how innocent are they?
The father's face was really tragic, I thought, coming out of the courtroom.
So when I met them, they were inundated with people asking them, how do I raise a child to be as great as your child? They were parents of the century. He's gotten rich, and all he wants to do is do good for other people. That was the beginning. Now, and then one day, they're the worst parents in the history of the world. What can I tell you? I think you should feel what you want to feel, but I can tell you that their involvement with the business has been far exaggerated in the media. What was true is that they were always kind of worried about him. I think one of their close friends said of their relationship with their son, they had these salons when Sam was little. They were center of social life at Stanford Law School. And all these smart people come over and they'd see the relationship between the parents and the child were a little unusual. And someone said they were both afraid for and of him. And that never left. I sensed that from the moment I met him. They were bewildered that all of a sudden he's on the cover of Forbes magazine. They do not understand the business at all. They're financially naive. And he is keeping them at more than arm's length. So that a month into my relationship with him in that business, when I was in the Bahamas, I would make a courtesy. I'd go have dinner with the parents, because it was always fun to hear what was going on in their lives. And they were doing a lot of philanthropic work, mostly. But I'd walk in, and they would say, what's he doing? Like, what are they talking about? Because Sam wouldn't let him in. And if you talk to Sam's scheduler, her most awkward conversations were with Sam's parents who wanted to get 15 minutes with him, and he wouldn't put him on the schedule. So they have been ferocious in the defense of him. I think they've been very brave in some ways. I mean, they've been put through hell, and they're the most affected by it. Sam seems almost unchanged. I mean, he can't be unchanged, but I've seen him in prison, and it's talking to the same person. I don't feel I'm talking to the same people when I'm talking to them. So I think your sympathy is not misplaced. Now, you can quibble. They accepted a $10 million house, or maybe no, more than that, in the bottom. He gave them a couple of things, but when he gave them those things, he and they believed he was worth $24 billion. So it's pretty trivial, it'd be kind of embarrassing not to give your law school professor parents a little money if you had $24 billion of it. So it didn't feel corrupt. They are not corrupt people. That's not them. Okay. And it's not me saying that. They're surrounded by really smart people who have evaluated them over a lifetime. Where they're going to get in trouble is in the mom's obsession with Trump. I mean, she built a political organization to defeat Trump, and he gave a bunch of money to that. So where they may have some technical legal problem is the money he gave to them to her political operation.
Can we just go to this?
Yep.
We're really a little over time now, so we'll just have this one question before we wrap.
This is not a Sam question, it's a Michael question. First off, I think half the people here are more fascinated by your stories, your characters, what you've been able to explain to the world that others can't because of your ability to understand it and explain it in a way that's fantastic. Do you have a character that you find most fascinating, most interesting, and why?
So it's like asking, do I have a child that I find most fascinating and most interesting? I get so wrapped up in trying to understand and explain them that I start to feel attached in a way. Now, not attached in a way that leaves them feeling good about what I wrote, because almost to a person, they get upset when they read the books. And then they get over it. They'll all be at my funeral. But they might not want to talk to me for 2 weeks after the book comes out. That happens a lot. And I'm surprised by what's upset them. Like I misjudged what they'd be sensitive to. But if you put a gun to my head and said, what character that you've written would you stake your literary reputation? Maybe Charity Dean in The Premonition. But I don't know, they're all pretty, I mean, the reason I write them is because I think they're great as characters. Right? And I mean, Billy Beane's a great character. Sam Bankman-Fried's a great character. Michael Burry's a great character.
And aren't you intrigued by the AI world? Aren't you absolutely going to write about it? I so hope you will.
I have a way of doing it, but it's going to require some unusual cooperation from Sam Altman.
Yeah.
But
he's coming on Wednesday.
I can't do it without being let in.
Yeah, well, I doubt he will. But anyway, listen, Michael Lewis, you are an absolute pleasure. You're an amazing fund of fascinating insights and stories. We're so lucky to have had you for this last hour. We could have easily another hour with you. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Tina.
For today.
That concludes our daytime programming. Please join us for Evenings at Ideas, which begins